Should work. All right, good to see everybody hopping on. Shane.
How's it going?
Yeah, bro. Normally people struggle with joining the live.
I'm not gonna lie, luck. You told me how to do it, it happened. So usually I'm horrible at tech stuff, so
I
it's not
know.
on me.
I was looking. I'm like, dude, what does Shane post on Instagram anymore? I'm kind of jealous. What's going on?
Yeah, man, we have the things we're good at and we have the things we're not good at, right? And there's some things that we do need to try to improve. Um, I just don't like the internet. I just don't like I love teaching like seminars in person. I love talking to people. I like having conversation with you, catching up. This is the only reason why I like any social media is like to have an opportunity to talk to someone like you. Otherwise, I'm out doing things. You know, Strength training's been my whole life, right? But I also and I enjoy it and I love it. But I have a lot of other things and other passions that I'm into and things that I like to do. And my education's not over, so I want to always evolve. One, as a strength coach, but two, just as a human being, and that's vast. That's extremely important to me. So I want to challenge myself all the time, mentally and physically, even outside of arenas that are not my norm. Just because you learn stuff from that. It creates different types of thought processes, and you want to gain wisdom, right? You want to think of multiple ways to use the knowledge that you have. So, the more things that I get into an experience, it just helps me grow. So, I try to stay off the internet as much as possible, which sounds weird. And it's funny because like I look at your business and I sent you a message. I was talking, I love like your business model because I think it's a really good, accessible strength, like system for kids to see and can get a good idea of how to psychologically handle addressing the gym and competition in life, and then also to gain a knowledge of how to sort through with the 20 million experts in fitness out there, in social media, which ones have the best idea of what they're talking about and what keeps someone safe, So, no, you have a great platform. So it's like, it doesn't bother me as other people do it, I think it's good to an extent. I have areas that I want to push in my life. So
I love it. Well, it's sometimes interesting. People from outside looking in are like, wow, it looks like he's impacting a lot of people. And so I always like to be very transparent with people is, yeah, I'm a strength coach in a high school and I'm still have to utilize marketing and communication skills to actually get the athletes and even the coaches and even administration, the people who hired me, to actually truly believe and fully support it. And so that's it's interesting. Sometimes Johnny Parker was a strength coach in the NFL. He said the definition of an expert is somebody with a different zip code. I was like, oh my God. People don't want to listen to who's right in front of you. So I was, after you and I kind of exchanged a couple texts earlier, I was like, I got to see what's the latest podcast Shane has done. I think the last one you did was with Jim Beebe, who's in Indiana, Athlete Builder podcast. He's had, it may have been last year, maybe 2023. And I was listening to it. I was like, man, I forgot that Shane told me he grew up in, I think you were doing Muay Thai and you were competing in bicycling, right? Right? Like the speed cycles.
yeah, so when I was a kid, I grew up, had asthma and just kind of had some lung issues and stuff. And so then I started running, ran, first 5K at 4 years old, my first 10K at 5. I got into cycling as a teenager and raced competitively like USCF. I did time trials, road races, criteriums. I did triathlons, kind of a little bit of everything. And that's where I really feel like that gave me a good base for the strength work, to have a good endurance and a good work capacity. And it built a mentality, right? So a lot of times you see people get into powerlifting and they haven't been in any other sport and they're looking for instant gratification. And at first it's good because, if you've never trained before, your numbers are going to go up for a while, and then at some point it becomes a grind and you have to look to the future or what you're going to do, right? Like you're not going to get the big gains anymore at some point. So the thing about endurance sports is you're not looking for instant gratification because what you're about to do is going to take a while, you
Yes.
know? So you're looking forward to that grind. And really, when I was an endurance athlete, like I can give you the mindset, like my first year racing road bikes, everybody had more expensive bike than I had. Everybody had more time involved in the sport. They had competed more, you know, and it was my first year. So I remember I was in a race, one day, and I was like, well, these athletes all know more than I do. They have better bikes than I have. They've been coached longer than I have. So I'm going to put them in the most pain they've ever felt in their life. And the more pain I feel, the more my lungs burn, the more my legs burn, the more excited I got. The more excited I got, I cranked it up. I made my lungs burn more. I made my legs burn more. I wanted to make anybody, anytime they saw me in the field, know they were about to suffer, you know?
Very good
And because,
mentality.
yeah, and because I thought, well, that's the only way I can win right now. But once I get the understanding of the sport and I get the coaching I need and I get time involved in the sport, my skill set's going to go up. My strategy, my ability to create a good strategy is going to increase. My ability to recognize things sooner when other people are starting to employ their strategies would increase. Then I have all these other tools available, but I will still always possess that ability to grind and make people suffer when I'm going against them in a competition. And the nice thing is that translated really well to strength work. And I really feel like strength athletes who've never had anything in an endurance background, any kind of work, that it makes it a lot harder for them to come through. And while I'm not asking a guy like half Thor to, who's a, massive individual, I'm not saying go run a marathon. That's not what I'm saying. But when you look at strongman, there's a lot of events in strongman that are also more of an endurance based. I got like strongman's like CrossFit for really big, strong, human beings,
Yeah.
and so that ability to suffer through that elevates them, right? So it's just a mindset, and I like those sports. I started, you know, um, like martial arts and going into kickboxing like from the time I was 5 years old, and I spent a long time doing that. And I always love that too. Like fighting sports, I absolutely love. What's a better test than it's like human chess, and every time you make the wrong move, you get hurt. So you learn really quick, fast learning curve in it.
You and I are the same age. We're 49.
Yep.
I had a conversation with somebody about martial arts in a while, but the same age. I remember Shane when we were like elementary, middle school age. There was such a like a mystique of every like martial arts school and such a respect for the master, even if he truly wasn't like some big master. There was a lot of respect to learning the craft. I remember my older brother would save up money. He was a bus boy, had a paper route with me. We would save up money and he would be able to sign up at like a few of the different local um, martial arts dojos. And it was just taken with such respect. And the master, had you doing push-ups on your knuckles. And I think just the, what you said earlier, you're seeking out new knowledge. I would love to hear about that. But I think back then, because the only way to get knowledge was to go into the thing, to do the damn thing. Whereas today, if I want to learn about Muay Thai or something, I might go on YouTube and do all kinds of shadow boxing by, following an instructional. I really do miss the purity of the days of mustering the courage to really have to immerse yourself. I'm, writing a second part of my book talking about that, where all these life lessons I learned going into a gym and no AirPods and having to earn the respect of
Yeah.
the biggest, strongest guys by showing up for months on end, and they watch you from the corner of their eye to see if you're working hard. And it took 3 months till they just said hi to you to
Mhm.
make sure you're not a fraud kid who's just here punching the clock. So what's what are you diving into now, like learning other things? Plus would love to hear an update on the gym business. I'm not sure, what you're doing with that and the
Yeah.
seminar. So a lot of stuff. We haven't chatted for a while.
All right. Well, I just want to say one thing real quick. Last thing about the martial arts thing, I 100% agree with you. Now you can watch. You might even be able to find a live feed of the gym you're looking at joining and watch a class or something online, right? So you know exactly what to expect to go in. Before we would walk in, you had no clue. Like, am I sparring? Is it am I going to do it the first day I'm here? How long does it take to happen? Like, who am I going to spar against? Like, how hard are they going to hit you? How hard are you allowed to go? Like you don't know anything, right? But one thing I have to say is, I've been a firm believer in this, and I just think this goes through your strength training, and it goes into any sport you do. It doesn't matter. It's kind of my view in life. Over 90% of people who get a black belt stop the minute they get a black
I've
belt.
heard
And then,
that. It's crazy.
yep, and then there's a high 90% that after a year never go again. So you're only left with 2-3% afterwards.
Yeah.
And maybe that's changed a little bit with jiu-jitsu being more prominent, because jiu-jitsu, people understand it's going to be a long time to go through the belt system, right? So that might change after a while. But my belief, my thought, my feeling about it was, a lot of, like, that 90% felt like they achieved their goal and they're done. I'm a black belt now, I'm done. For me, I looked at the black belt as that is the beginning. I have finally mastered my basics. I have gained the knowledge to say I have a full understanding of the system, a full understanding of the techniques and movements. Now it's time for me to become a martial artist. Now it's time for me to take that knowledge, try to evolve it, and learn as much about myself and how to utilize it to the utmost for my structure, my athleticism, and my pros and cons as an athlete and as a human being. And so, black belt to me is the beginning, not the end. And I think if you look at, someone gets an elite total, a world record in powerlifting, it's like, okay, you have a world record in powerlifting. That's the beginning. Okay. Now, some people, that's the goal. It's all I ever want to do. Well, that's great. But now you've gained a certain amount of knowledge to get there. Doesn't make you a coach. Maybe you can coach, maybe you can't. And if you want to coach, well, now you've been an athlete. Now you have to become a coach. So now you have to take that knowledge, and now you're starting to become a coach.
Yes.
Even though you're world record holder, that's fine. But now it's day one as a coach, right? And then you have to gain that knowledge. So basically, like, that thought process has always been with me. And so the new things that I'm getting into really now is, there's things I'm working on. I'm working on a book right now too. It's going to be a little while, but I'm working on it. But what's that?
Is it in strength training?
Yeah. Yep. 100% strength training. I do want to do something on mentality also.
Nice.
Because I really think that comes along. But right now, we're both 49 years old. Okay. And, I know, we both have had parents with some health issues and things going on. And with that, it is not really changed my outlook on strength training. It has fortified my outlook on strength training. Things I believed in, like, I'm just going farther down the rabbit hole. But, one of the problems that I see when people get older is that every time someone gets hurt, the majority of people avoid that exercise or similar exercises. The way I look at it is, if someone gets hurt doing a movement, I want to learn, why did they get hurt, fortify the problem, and I want to rehab them in a manner that allows them to regain that movement as a movement that's a viable movement for them, that they will not get hurt on. Because if you get hurt at 25 years old and you lose a movement there, and every 2 years you lose a movement, well, how many movements can't you do by the time you're 50, 60 years old? Yeah. So if we want to have a high quality life, because no matter what, as a strength coach, that's what we're trying to do, improve someone's quality of life and give them the highest quality life we can for what the time and effort they're willing to put in, and what they're trying to do. So for me, I want an athlete to regain any movements that were lost. I want to retain those movements as long as possible, because this means that structurally our joints are moving better if we don't lose any movements, and our joints have to be healthy. And I think that's one of the things I really do wish I knew more when I was younger about strength training, because I would have put a lot more effort into my joints to keep joint health, because down the road, that's going to be the issue, right?
What would be like when you think of joint health, what are you thinking about movement wise, or?
We'll start with like something very simple and easy, right? Joint health, one, I would have done, like, if I could go back and tell the 15-year-old, 14-year-old self, when they're training in the gym, I would, make sure I did a finisher every workout I did. So I do 100, 200 reps, go for a time minute just to flush blood. And I look at that finisher as like a minute version of PRP therapy, right? PRP
Oh,
therapy is a very concentrated version of, taking the healing properties in your blood and injecting it into an area. Well, it's not as strong to do a finisher like that. But if we did a finisher every workout, we would increase the blood flow, which carries hydration and nutrition into the area, allows your tissue to glide better with the hydration. The nutrition helps you heal quicker. What I can say is, I've had a gym for 18 years and no one's ever had tendonitis in my gym because I make everybody do finishers at the end of every workout, right? So I would have done finishers at the end of every workout, and then I would also choose movements that are a little bit, say, safer. So, as an example, I did skull crushers a lot. I was strong in them. I had good triceps, and it helped my bench go up, right? Or give muscle mass and get the leverages for it. Well, I like doing skull crushers to pins. So now I set pins at a 90-degree angle. I come down to them, I touch, pause, and I fire up. Just breaking up that eccentric concentric phase like a box squat on the skull crushers. That alone is way easier on my elbows. It's the same movement, you know, but it's healthier. It's easier on my body. And then I'm not working the stretch reflex, so I can work the stretch reflex independently, and then I can work static overcome biodynamic independently as well. So taking a look at the movements that we have available, bringing more variety in, always having a finisher, because I look at variety, right? Like athlete's no different than a factory worker. Factory worker does movements, hundreds of thousands, millions of times. So does an athlete, right? So repetitive motion injuries are just not for a factory worker; they're for an athlete as well.
yes.
So anytime we can change the angle, grip, whatever, all that stuff adds up. But it really would be a lot of like joint health, working stability, trying to make sure that my joints were as strong and balanced as possible. Really, like what I do now is assess movement, right? So I see an athlete move and I see that positions they can't attain, and I know that's a mobility issue. Then I see underneath the load, it's a position they can't maintain. It's a strength issue. So all I have to do is look for movement, and as long as I have that athlete who can move perfectly, I know they're well balanced. And I would have done that for myself, in junior high and high school had I known what I know now.
You're talking about mindset, and I don't know how much you're still coaching a lot of power lifters, or has that changed the past few years since
I'm
we've.
not coaching as many powerlifters, but I do coach powerlifters. I work with powerlifters. I do a strength portion of programming for Jeff Adler, who won the CrossFit Games. So I work with some CrossFitters, military, all different sports, really. Louis always used to say he's a strength coach, not a powerlifting coach. But he's like, but as a strength coach, I'm supposed to make people stronger. So I use my powerlifters to show you
Yes.
that I can make people strong, right? And I kind of feel the same way. I love all different types of sports, man. And really the biggest thing for me is I love someone who has a passion and a drive. So I don't care what sport they're from,
Yeah.
and I don't care how good they are. If you have a drive, like in discipline, oh yeah, I'll work with you, and I don't care what sport it is. That is more important to me. I love the sport of powerlifting. I'll train anybody for powerlifting, but give me the person who's gangster mentally, and
So
I'll get into it.
think about this mentality specific to powerlifting. Donnie Thompson, Super D, puts this out a lot. He's like, hey, the 3,000-pound total invite is still there. He's like, but nobody's been able to do it besides himself and David Hoff.
Yep.
To me, the most impressive thing was Donnie did it at age 45 or 46.
Mm-hmm.
Insane. Most 45 or 46-year-olds, kid struggle to do 5 or 10 push-ups.
Yep.
It just really, blows my mind that he was able to do that. So do you think men have just kind of hit the limit of what they could do physically, or does people just not kind of like, I got my black belt, I hit elite total, I'm not interested in that 3,000-pound total? Geared powerlifting is not as popular, but still more people know about it. I don't want to say I'm shocked that nobody's done it, because it's actually fucking crazy to even think 3,000, but he did it at 46. That to me is the most impressive thing. So why do you think we haven't seen it? Do you think of that at all?
So, let's look at the two people who've done a 3,000 pound up total, right? Diane Thompson, like you said, and Dave Hoff. Dave Hoff isn't just a strong guy. He is someone who studies, reads books, constantly tries to evolve. Lou taught him a lot, gave him books to read, and he read them and he paid attention to them. He talked to a lot of other good lifters, and he was constantly trying to search for a way. I mean, look at how much time it took him to put an extra 5 pounds on his 3,000 pound total, right? I mean, he had to step away for a long period of time just to add a little bit, right?
Yep.
But he learned a lot in that time. And then the second time, there was a big jump as well. And then you look at Donnie Thompson. Well, Donnie Thompson's an innovative guy, right? Donnie is someone who is great at rehab and therapy, but he was a football player. He played, multiple sports. He has a mindset for it, and he's not someone who rushes things, right? Dave Hoff is extremely patient. Donnie Thompson is very patient. And if you want to truly do something amazing in sport, you have to be patient. Doesn't mean you can't make fast gains when they're there. It doesn't mean that you can't get to the top quick. But if you can get to the top quick, you're nowhere near your potential. So again, if you want to see greatness, then we have to have patience. You look at Chuck Vogelpohl broke his last world record. I believe it was 47, and Amy Weisberger broke her last one at 48 years old. I do believe that the world record for the limits for world records age-wise is around in the 50 to low 50 age group, right? Which, we haven't seen yet. But what we do know is we have a higher level of technology and training, a better understanding of training. So why aren't we breaking records, like you said now, for a longer period of time? And I believe that's because mentality is starting to change. It's harder to find people that are really mentally strong and can keep the eye on the prize, and in a world right now of instant gratification, we're not feeding and giving fuel to these young kids on how to get past instant gratification and get to something where they can have a long-term focus and a goal. And I think that is really the big part. The other part too is it's very easy to avoid, right? You break a world record or you get close to it and you put a lot of stuff on social media and you get a lot of fame from it or popularity and you made it, right? No, you didn't make it. Did you get the last ounce out of yourself? Did you get the last ounce of your total? That's when you made it. If you broke world records by 10%, which is massive, right? But you're only at 80% of your potential, then you failed. I've always said I would rather train the person who's number 500 in the world in squat, but I get the last ounce out of them than train someone who's number one who broke a ton of world records who left percentages on the platform of what they were.
We,
That,
in sports, I don't know if I'm saying that's what I'm seeing in athletics, but I follow wrestling really closely. So what I see in wrestling is there's no kind of middle ground. There's just very, very elite. Like there's high kids, there's 17-year-olds, at the Olympic trials beating Division I national champs who are 8 years older than them. Very elite. But then there's like not there's no middle ground. There's kind of like this no developmental. They're completely obsessed with it. And I spoke at our wrestling banquet on Sunday. So today's Tuesday. And I was talking a bit about patience. What you said is I said, who you are today or this season is not who you can become. But I said, my daughter started playing tennis in her diapers. So like age 4, 3, something like that. So young. And at the high school level, very successful, qualifying for states every year. But it wasn't until last year, the summer before senior year, that she started winning a lot during these big tournaments. And the past 2 years have been kind of up and down the East Coast. So I'm driving home from Georgia. She's asleep. My daughter's just about to be 18 at that time, and she's asleep. And I was thinking of what you're saying. I was like, man, like summer, we'd go to these tournaments and she would win 50%, or she would win 1 out of 4 or 2 out of 4. Now it's like winning 3 out of 4, winning almost all the time. And I thought to myself, oh my God, it took 14 fucking years of all year work. And of course, she doesn't understand it. But while she's sleeping as a coach, I'm thinking 14 years, most kids, at age 15 or 16, they're like, well, I'm not winning everything, so it is what it is. Well, you've got to have this full immersion, and you may not achieve or experience the success, until 3 to 4 years,
Mhm.
and that's really hard. To keep losing more than 50% of the time before you finally taste some victory.
Yeah, and that's common for kids. There's not a lot of kids who are going to want to stay that long in a sport before they have payoff. But there's always something I've said that people need to learn their own way to win, right? Like so, if you play the same sport as your daughter when you're younger, you might have different attributes that allowed you to win, right? You keep everything in your strengths and stay out of your weaknesses, and hers can be different. So people try to mimic other athletes, and you have to become the best you that you can be, not a variation of someone else. You need to learn how you win and optimize your thought processes and your physical training and your mental training for that. But people right now, I think kids, they have so much available to them that it's like they just want these tastes, but nobody wants to dive in. They just want tastes of things. And the problem is you're never going to be truly great until you spend an excessive amount of time in an area. And that's where Diane Thompson and, you look at Dave Hoff, yeah, he broke that world record of Donnie's when he was younger, but he also started at Westside at 14 years old.
Yeah.
So the wealth of knowledge and time in a really high level place was high for him by the time he got to that 3,000 pound total. And so, what we're looking at now is that, if you grew up on a farm in the 40s, you would see that patience paid off,
Yeah.
because you plant something, it doesn't come up in an hour. It takes a while, right? And then you find out, oh, we got these kind of bugs. Well, how do we fix? I've never seen this kind of bugs before. How do we take care of this? I see this kind of illness or sickness, on these plants. It it's you gain wisdom throughout years, right? You might see something new. A young farmer doesn't know what to do with it. An old farmer might not even seen that before, but they've seen so many things that they'll be able to come up with a way to take care of it and handle it. And people think that they're born a certain way now, I believe. I think that you see people say, well, you know, I'm this or I'm that. So I want to say you're 13, you're 14, you're 15. You can be anything you want to be, right? And it goes back to that saying where it's like every choice you make, you have a decision. You can make the easy decision or the correct one. And
Mm.
if you make the correct one, you become mentally tougher. If you take the easy choice, you become mentally weaker. So at the end of 10 years, what's the percentage of mentally strong choices did you make, and what's the percentage of easy choices did you make? And that is going to dictate what you'd become as an athlete or as a human being. I've seen mentally strong people become mentally weak. I've seen mentally weak people become mentally strong, and nowadays we all have kids, well, I'm this. Why? Because you saw somebody said, hey, if you have this attribute, this attribute, and this attribute, this is the type of person you are. Or you're strong here, but you're weak here, you know? And at the end of the day, there's not one athlete who walks in the gym who's literally strong at every single thing, right? So you have a strong squatter who can't bench well, or you have someone who's a bencher who has strong triceps but weak back. Another bencher has a strong back but weak triceps, and another one has strong both but horrible technique, or poor shoulder mobility. And so nobody's the same. We all have to learn to really evolve and get somewhere far, but we have to answer the tough questions and look at ourselves honestly, and not care. It doesn't matter what I see. I have to fix it. Nobody's perfect. It's okay. But whatever you are, you can evolve.
Yeah.
You know?
Like the thought of making progress. You were talking about the athletes who were mentally strong became mentally weak. Some of them did. What was that? Was it from just taking the easy options more often than not?
Yeah, you can have someone who's a world champion, a world record holder, or even just someone who's an elite, just a good athlete, right? And what I'll see is like if I see someone who can stay in weight class for a while, but they hate doing it, but they could push their world records up and they don't want to stay in that weight class, that's mentally weak. Okay? Stay in that weight class so you have no option. Now, I'm not saying if you're like, hey, I want to go take a record from so and so, like I want that record, and you go up, you go right back. Hit all, like, I don't care about your comfort level. If you care about comfort, do it for fun. That's
Mm.
okay. But if you say you want to be the best, comfort is not an issue. That is nothing that should even be discussed. It is you do what needs to be done to be the best. That's it. If you prefer to eat certain things a certain way, it's not conducive to ultimate output in sport. Sorry, you're saying you want to be the best, but your actions are showing me otherwise. The other thing too is people like to avoid. So it's kind of like um, low hanging fruit. People might be in a weight class that's optimal for them, but they can find a weight class to go sneak that world record. I'm not saying don't get it. Don't stay there though. Get it, go back to the weight class that's harder for you. It's hard and there's more competition and smash that later. Okay, use it as a stepping stone, but don't stay there. If there's easy numbers there, don't stay there. Get them up, go where the challenge is, because the challenge is what is gonna make you grow, right? And I see that like I was talking to a figure competitor that I'm working with, and so she's like, saw a competition this week, and I could have won that competition right now, and I'm 10 weeks out, and I'm leaner than anybody on stage, and I have more muscle, and she's right, she is, and she's like, I should have signed up because she's going to do her first competition, and it is basically as big of a show as you can get that's not nationals. Okay, it's a national qualifier. It's a people go there to tune up to get ready for nationals. And there's going to be a lot of competition. And I said, well, it doesn't matter. I said, this is your first show. If you put yourself up against tougher opponents, you can see people at a higher level, and you might learn some things from them. Little ways they move, or ways they pump up in the back, or a mindset, or just there's like watch your competitors. If you watch low-level competitors all the time, you're going to learn nothing. Surround yourself with the best, right? So I was like, it's not about the win. I said, this is your first show. I was like, all if you win it, all it says is you picked the wrong show, because there is Miss Olympia out there. And until you're better than she is, then you only are entering shows that have lower competition than what you are. There's as long as there's someone who can beat you, you're working on stepping stones anyway. So what's the trophy matter? Trophy doesn't matter anything to me. What matters to me is how far I can go. Like as an individual, it's like if I could say, hey, I could say squat 950 and break a world record, or I could be number 2 or 3 in the world but squat 1,000. I'd rather squat 1,000. Why? All world records are borrowed, nothing's owned. I'd rather take myself as far as I can. Now, there's obviously something to be said about breaking a world record. That's a goal. That's huge, right? But what I'm getting at is I want to go as far as I can, and I see people enter like in bodybuilding shows like multiple divisions, or like say figure shows in multiple divisions, like trying to figure out how they can get as many trophies as possible. I could care less about that. I want to pick a show. I want to do as well as I can. I wanted to make an adjustment, and I want to improve myself. So I don't even understand worrying about placement until it's the gold medal at the Olympics, till it's the world record, till it's the world championship, because there's someone out there who can beat you. Now, it's cool to rise to the occasion. Like you have a 14-year-old daughter. Like, yeah, you want her to go against people where it's like she's got to gut it out to get the win, so she learns something about herself, right? But ultimately, it depends how far do you want to go. And if you want to go all the way, then pick the right competitions. Surround yourself with really tough competition. That'll toughen you quicker. You'll learn more by being around better people.
Just the way you describe this, it reminds me of the importance of environment. So Dave Hoff started training at Westside at age 14, but let's say he started training somewhere else at age 14. That environment is such a shaping. It just changes everything. So Dan John and John Welborn talk about this, like the three things that will impact performance was genetics, geography, and opportunity. So geography, if I live in Dagestan, I'll probably be a
Mm-hmm.
wrestler and very likely become an MMA fighter. If I'm in Ohio, there's a lot, combat sports and football is huge in Ohio. So I'm going to have access and opportunity to those things. And then genetics, you can't do anything about it. But I find that when athletes, train younger, I'm sure you've seen this, they can, kind of defeat bad genetics if they start really locking in on nutrition and training. But it's actually, as you know, as a coach, Shane, it's quite rare to see really great coaches. There's more strength and conditioning facilities than ever before. And I say this a lot. We haven't chatted for a bit, so I'll say it like it's, new. I said, I've never seen kids do so much stuff yet achieve so little
Mm-hmm.
in return. So we have a coach, actually. I hired a full-time coach at my gym. He was a thrower at Ashland, so he mentored under Judd, and as you know, Olympic thrower and highly influenced by Lou and all the overseas training. And so he just was saying, like, man, these kids, like, they show up a little bit late, then they got to leave early. They're going to wrestling club, basketball. They're on multiple travel teams. I said, before the travel teams exploded when the iPhone really started getting popular, 2012, 2013. Our athletes always stayed after 30 minutes, an hour. So they doubled their training volume in that session, and they also trained more often. We had results with the kids. And so it's just an interesting dichotomy. They're really running around, doing a lot. And the other thing I would say is, you mentioned the competition. I was like, man, I haven't heard somebody speak the way you're speaking in such a long time. Somebody who's really training people to win, and meaning a lot of athletes now do a lot of private lessons. And the private lesson, if you are in a competitive sport, takes you out of the competing group. And I found that it's just comfortable that way. And I've always been a believer in, you got to be in a group environment to compete against others, to get the energy. And especially in wrestling, yeah, maybe a private here and there, but you need to go to the wrestling club and be in the group. And I saw something on Instagram years ago, a great quote. It just said, go get your ass kicked, because then you get pissed off. You're like, fuck, man, I'm going to fucking train harder. I'm not going to get my ass kicked by Shane next. But that mentality is very rare nowadays. Very rare.
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned really everything that's the problem. You're right. One of two things happens when you get beat. You either cower and leave, or you go, you thought that was something. Watch what I do next. And so, I have the utmost respect for Lou, but nobody at that gym would have been as good if Louis worked with them one-on-one and trained them one-on-one. Lou understood the importance of building the atmosphere and having the group, because the group, you could get a group mentality where everybody was killers there. So when you add another person, they have no choice. There's only one direction and thought process they are allowed to have, and that is to join that group or leave. Like that, they have two options: leave, but there's only one option if they're going to be an athlete. And so that training that happened at Westside was with groups, and that's exactly what you're saying, like about, say, a wrestler, and people are always doing privates and stuff now. But just like I said, we live in a world with instant gratification, but now kids have so many sports available to them, and you have kids that are playing two or three competitions in a day, sometimes 4 or 5 days a week worth of competitions, sometimes multiple sports at the same time, or same sport, multiple teams. And so parents can pick, like, well, my kid's not getting enough time there, or the pitching staff's too good. The pitchers are too good on this team, so I'll take them to this team.
Yes.
No. Put them with the team with the best pitchers. At the end of the year, we'll see if your kid closes distance or not. If he closes or she closes distance, that's because they have the right mentality for this. If they don't, we need to work on mentality, right?
Because hard thing for parents to grasp, if they didn't have, I always say, you don't need to be like a high achieving athlete, but if you are a competitor, they're not going to understand what you're saying, Shane, but they need to understand that mindset.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just one of those things where they need to understand that. That's how you get, and it doesn't mean the kid becomes the best pitcher the world's ever seen. Maybe they just become middle of the road on that team when they were the dead last person in that position. But it sets them up for business or life or another sport, right? And if they find the right sport with the right coaches and the right people, great. And maybe that is it. We do hear stories. You hear Pete stories about, like, Pete Rose and people like that who were not phenomenal at their sport, weren't naturally athletic, and put a lot of time in. But if a parent doesn't like what a coach has to say, even if it's right, they can switch teams.
Yeah.
If the competition's too good over here, we can go over there. Or, I want my kid to stay entertained, so I'm going to put him in 3 different sports, or we're going to be on multiple different teams. When do they get better? You know,
Yeah, or they just now they switch schools.
so it's just one of those yes, exactly. And so for me, for me, it's important about an off season, right? An off season is when you become better, and so kids aren't getting better. They're just getting more time in sport. So they gain some skill from time in, but where's the concentrated effort? Where is the plan? Where is the execution of the plan? When you execute your plan, you take a look at the gains that you've made. Where did you improve? Where didn't you improve at? And then you make another plan and keep building upon that plan. And then by the time that kid spent 6, 8, 10 years in sport, that plan has evolved consistently for a long period of time where it's perfected for that individual, how they win, their structure, where to get them the improvements they need, right? But if we just keep bouncing around at different places, we're never going to get that.
That takes patience, as you said, but
Mm-hmm.
also commitment. And that's people fear that, like they're afraid to do something for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I very honest conversations with parents when they're going to sign up. My gym is a real simple membership. You could do 3 months, which goes monthly, or a year, which goes monthly afterwards. But I say, don't sign up for the 1 year if you are going to have a emotional breakdown when your son or daughter gets busy in season.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that, I go, look, I'm talking to you as a dad who takes my kids to sport clubs because I don't want to be the topic at the dinner table of stress, or you're mad at us because you signed up for a year and now you don't want to do it. And then I say, but now I'm going to talk to you as a coach. I say, who do you think the best athletes are here? The ones that don't train in season or the ones that train year round? So I'm telling you as a coach, but now as one dad to the other, I'm letting you and your family make that decision. But it's always interesting. Like, I feel like you don't need to be an expert to simply say, hey, we're going to do this sports strength, athletic strength program to get better at the sport. But when the sport stops, we're going to stop the very thing that gives us the advantage. And so, I'm really working hard. As you said, I got this platform. I don't know how much it impacts people, but I always say we're trying to educate parents by simply saying it's not all the same. Meaning, I drive a car, you drive a car, but so do the guys who race NASCAR. We don't. It's all the same thing, as you
Yeah.
parents say, but we don't do it. Or in CrossFit, hey, this person does cleans and walks on their hands, but not every, but Rich Froning just does it better. And, whoever else is the best. I want to see what, I guess, is one of your athletes, Taylor, been doing Conjugate for years, took me to CrossFit Games through the Marines, 2 babies, still crushing it in the gym, thanks to Shane and Laura. So we call that really training for life. And so, right, this Taylor could have been training at another place doing the same exercises, but it's how you do it. And I think people, the consumer, the person on the receiving end of this, they're still lost with that, maybe because overabundance of information.
Yeah, that's the thing too. It's hard for parents, Taylor's an animal, by the way. She has done some amazing things as an athlete and stuff, but just an amazing human being as well. But the thing about it is, I'm sorry, lost train of thought. What were we saying? I'm sorry. I just
So we're talking about kind of parents, or really anybody on the receiving end of our information chain. They could be confused, meaning when people are like, so what? We squat, bench, and deadlift also. It's all the same. Sometimes I say, well, if it's all the same, how come we don't all squat more than the guys at Westside, right? They're box squatting, so are we. Why? It's evidently not the same. I say it's how you do it, but I guess what we were kind of getting at is the people consuming our information, they don't realize the depth of and all the details. Like, you could see me box squat and you'd be like, Zach, you know what? Your feet got to be out an inch. I noticed that you're not fast off the box. And then all of a sudden in your mind, you've got 30 to 40 different things you're thinking of strategy wise to help me do that. You're looking at my grip, noticing maybe my shoulders slouch a little bit. My elbows have bad position. You're noticing all 50 things I could do right. But somebody else might just be like, hey, I'm copying the box squat off the internet and I'm doing the same thing as Shane Sweatt does. So it's such a believer in how we do things.
So, I always tell people go be as close to a well of knowledge as possible. So, whatever information you're trying to gather, go to the person who learned it from the person who invented it, or the person who invented it, or the person who's been doing it the best. Every coach that, say, like if you take Hicks and Gracie's the best at, you know, mine in jiu-jitsu, right now. And so, if you want to get from him, if you go to his best black belt, you lost a few percent.
Mm.
You go to that black belt's black belt, you lost a few percent. So I want to get as close to the well of knowledge as possible. But what I do is this: the hard part is seeing it online or in reading stuff. They're going to go to whoever writes best, because whoever writes best is going to sound the most convincing. If I get someone in person, though, I'll ask questions if I have to. I usually don't need to. What I do is I watch the person walk in. So, like, if I see their toes pointed out, I like,
Yes.
hey, your kid has weak glutes. If I see their shoulder dropped, I start to look. Does the hip tilted forward, pulling on the lat? Does the pec get tight, pulling the shoulder in, trying to stabilize it? And I'll start picking apart their movement quality, and then I'll say, okay, what sport do you play? And then I'll tell them what they're bad at in the sport. Because if I know what they're bad at in the sport without seeing them, just because I've watched them move, but I haven't seen them play sport, that's how I get parents to understand that I understand what I'm talking about. So, because it's like, well, how do you know that? You've never seen my kid play. I watch them move.
Yes. I love
Plain and
looking. I
simple.
mean, weirdo, but like I also love to assess, and I always look at posture and foot position. It tells you so much about how somebody can
Mhm.
move, especially like feet tilted out or toes pointed out. You know that sprinting, running is going to be is going to be hampered, and interesting that you can't shut off that coach's mind. And I think that is a true coach. And so I get frustrated when somebody does a cut and paste from somebody else. And then, oh, yeah, we do all the same exercises. I tell them, yeah, look, in football, everybody has a football field, a football coach, and a football. But some teams are always winning, some are always in the middle, and some are always at the bottom. Why? It's all the same equipment. It's how the coaching is done. Let's segue into you and I, age 49. I think the podcast we did, Shane, it must have been a while ago. It was episode like 150 something. This is going to be 499 or 500, so it was years ago. I'd love to hear, as you've gotten older, if you've changed anything in the gym, from the training aspect as well as the business aspect.
So the business has changed. My gym is 24 hours now. That's a little more conducive to to getting people in the doors. And I work with a wider range of athletes now, so that's a little bit different. I always worked with kind of any athlete, but I've been working a lot of gymnasts lately and some other sports. And but really the thing comes down to is it's really made me hone in even harder on the attributes that I learned at Westside, like not missing a weight, right? So, we tell people to work up to the highest weight you can hit. That way you have a very good understanding of what you're actually capable of, and you don't miss weight. So you don't recover from weights that you've missed as fast as you recover from weights that you've made and you've accomplished. So, so that is it's important not to miss those lifts. And then, like I said, exercise selection, more variety, because I want to clear any chance of mobility issues or weaknesses. So basically, if you have to introduce 15% or more new exercises to an athlete per year for an athlete to learn new movement at the fastest rate possible, right? So I want to make sure that I bring 15% more movement in. If you're dealing with an athlete who's 50 years old and they've been competing since they were 5, 6, 7 years old in sport, you got your work cut out for you to introduce new movement to them. But the thing about it is, mentally and physically, this is where I see that our progression stops as we get older, is that we don't bring enough variety in to athletes, and we make excuses because of age, right? So we say, oh, we shouldn't do this because of age, or we shouldn't do plyometrics because of age. I have a guy who's in his 60s who weighs in the 181 class, who broke a world record raw deadlift of over 600 pounds, okay, in his 60s at 181, and he's a 600-pound puller, raw, and he's didn't have much time, and we worked together for a few years, but he wasn't a power lifter. He actually was a guy who worked at the Pentagon and had a really high level job and had a high stressful job, and it was a brain, very intelligent individual. And so I have him do plyometric jumps, and people are like, I can't believe you're having that guy jump. Like, did you see how high he jumped? Yeah, I can't believe how high he can jump. Do you want to know why he deadlifts a lot? So what I'm getting at is, we have the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it, right?
Oh yeah.
If we don't do explosive training, we're going to lose our explosiveness. What's a great way to feel old? Get slow. What's a great way to feel old? Lose mobility. What's another good way to feel old? Lose strength. So the more variety of exercise I have, the harder it is for a glaring weakness to hide, right? So the weakness could be a movement quality, mobility. It could be a loss of speed through an area. So maybe someone is slow off the box now and they're strong at top half, but slow at the bottom, or slow in the middle, or slow at the top. The more positions I get people into, I can assess where they lose speed better and be more accurate. But I can also find if we're starting to have a mobility issue start to sneak up, or like I said, lack of strength somewhere. So I want to bring that variety in because I need an athlete's mind and body to work, and they need new movements to learn new things, right? So, people get older. Like, I think that's why I think you're going to see a big problem with Alzheimer's and dementia is in the next 10 to 15 years, because people just look at their phone and they just take information
I
in.
said this, had this conversation with my dad, and you and I were having these conversations. My dad just had triple bypass surgery, and after surgery, he was forgetting things. And I said, what we got to do is get your mind working. We got to get you doing crossword puzzles and reading books. I said, because most people today are just consuming from the phone. It's just input. There's no output. There's no creativity. I wonder if that's why, like my mom's in a rehab nursing home, be coming home Saturday, but they do those they'll give them art classes like that to keep the brain going. But obviously exercise has made we've heard about the research of exercise, anti-inflammatory foods, and just you saying, Shane, about the introducing new exercises and your 24-hour gym. I'd like to ask you a question, get your your expert feedback here. Our 5:45 adult group, I feel like it's like you're really tight, you're stiff, and yet our 8:30 a.m. group has got a lot more pep in their step. So our 5:45 a.m. group, I've really been cautious to not load the spine and put a bar on their back. But then I'm thinking to myself, we do Zercher squats with a med ball, Zercher squats with a barbell, a kettlebell squat, an offset squat. But part of me is like, man, we should at least try to load the spine. We've done some sumo deadlifting, trap bar deadlifting, but in the morning that isn't there. So did you have, before it was a 24-hour gym, or even now with personal training, do things change when you're working with adults at that early time where they're, the spine isn't really super ready to go? Do you adjust things?
So the interesting thing is when you're talking like, when I had my CrossFit gym, the early morning classes were the killers. Like, I'm not talking about like competitors, but if you're talking about class members, they were the most dedicated, hardest working on average. I mean, there was good people who worked hard in all classes, but
Sure.
that was where you got the biggest concentration group.
What time?
What I would,
5:15?
what's that?
What was your morning class? For 6?
I think it was around 5:30 or so, So the thing about it though is that I think the thought process changed. Okay, so when you get up earlier, then I would make a suggestion to my athletes to say, hey, before you come in class, we're having an issue where we can't really load you because you're stiff. So what I want you to do is some dynamic kicks forward and out to the side to open up your hips in the morning. So first thing you do when you wake up, 3 or 4 sets of 20 dynamic kicks per leg forward, and then swings out to the side. So we get that dynamic stretch so we can stretch and lengthen the tissue. So by the time I get to class, I'm feeling a little more, my tissue's elongated back to where it should be, and then maybe I can move a little bit better from there. But I would say, though, personally, I would just start pushing them and not hide any movements from them, and I would think that will eventually start opening it up and taking care of it. It's funny because my mom, I took her to the gym a couple weeks ago. So my mom lives up in Michigan. She's a few hours away. So, I took her to the gym, and we got a workout in, and I asked her what she does for legs. Like, so I actually laid out her training, and she's like, "Well, I stopped training legs. The doctor told me to stop training legs because my back's been bothering me, or my back bothers me when I do leg work." And I was like, "Your back's bothering me because you're not doing legs." So we started training legs, and 3 weeks in, she's like, "There's already such a big difference, and my back feels so much better." And so, we oftentimes get some information from somebody maybe who, tries but gives us the wrong information. Um, and that ends up being a problem. The only constant we in life is change, right? So we have to get very good at change. So it's the best way to get good at it, constantly change, right? Introduce new movements. For me, it's funny because my wife and I were talking like I would love to learn how to completely homestead, be able to just live, off the land and stuff. And we have some property. So this year we're making a massive improvement in size of like garden and stuff like that, and planting a lot of different stuff we didn't have before. And part of the reason why we're doing that is, one, to eat healthier. Two, um, I am consistently going to still evolve as a strength coach. But the farther down the rabbit hole you go, you start to get diminishing returns as a human being, right? Like I can only gain fractions in areas where I'd gain, multiple percent before. So I can go learn things that are completely different, and I can make really fast gains in those areas because they're completely new and fresh to me. But that gets my mind working, and the sharper my mind is and the faster my recall is and the faster I process thoughts, the better I can use this information and thought processes and evolve in my strength training as well. So I don't want to spend all my time and effort into one area, because I also believe, just like it takes 15% or more new movements a year to learn at the fastest rate possible, I also think that it's probably around 15% or more new information and studying on things that you normally wouldn't do to be as well-rounded as possible and open your mind to different thought processes and different things. So that is where I'm starting to put my thoughts into other areas, because I think I'll actually evolve as a strength coach better, even though it's not directly related. But what if I learn more about, I start having my own food, and I learn some things from that, right? And I notice an actual improvement from maybe store-bought to that, maybe health or output or things. So, and that could level me up. And even if not, that doesn't matter. I'm learning something new. I need my mind as sharp as possible, and introduction of new information, new material is huge for that.
So I think Instagram's gonna shut down this video in a minute. Do you want to do a part 2 next week, Shane? Maybe
That'd be great, man. Would love to.
this was amazing. I love what you're saying, that the new skills, because I think as we get older, we stop new hobbies and new skills. This was awesome. I'm gonna post this up because it's gonna shut down, I think, in a minute, and I'm gonna text you after. How could people reach out to you if they want coaching online or any consulting? Just through Instagram
Yeah.
or website?
On Instagram, Sweatshop Cincinnati. If you send me a message on there, get a hold of it. We can talk and see if it's a good fit and see how I can help you.
I love it. Super inspiring. I'll post this up and I'm going to text you, my brother. This was great.
Okay. And sorry, one last thing.
Oh, yeah.
We're on Conjugate Methods course. If you go online, I do seminars also. We post the dates on the course on there. Okay.
On where? Where's the?
It's on the Conjugate Methods. Sorry, ask my wife. Conjugate Powerlifting. Sorry.
I saw that.
So many. Yeah.
I see you're still doing live seminars. It's hard to get people to do stuff in person. Very impressive that you're doing it.
We're not doing as many as we used to because it is difficult, but we're going to keep pushing and
I love it.
Keep trying.
You're the best.
Yeah.
I'm going to text you in 5 minutes. I'm going to post this up. Thank you, my bro.
All right. You have a good one, buddy.
Shane, talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.